Hey everyone. I have tried to make a video about Omenpaths since Omenpaths started. Through the Omenpaths, if you don't know, was the digital conversion of the Spider-Man set from 2025. And it actually is my favorite set from that year. I think I have kind of controversial opinions about the sets from that year. I think my second favorite is actually Aether Drift, so, you know, take my opinions with a grain of salt, I guess. But I really like it. And I don't think that Spider-Man's a good set, but I do think Omenpaths is the best set. How does that work? My engagement with Magic is not just like, how strong are the cards? That's like, not the most interesting thing about the game. I want the cards to be evocative. I do want them to be cool. And I'm not like a Magic boomer who's really invested in like the crunchy details of Dominaria. I think a lot of old Magic is kind of boring in flavor. I joined Magic about 5-ish years ago. I like Strixhaven. I like New Capenna. I like more modern takes on fantasy that we've been seeing in more recent years. Thunder Junction, Duskmorn. That's the stuff I'm really into when I see Magic, and I think that Omenpaths hit it really well. At the time, I did make a video going over my thoughts quickly, but they're just a little bit there. And not that many people really watched that video. I, from the get-go, wanted to make a video where I go over every single legend and try to prove that there's more going on in this set than a lot of people give it credit for. That there's something interesting to say about every single legend in the set, and that they aren't just all new characters that have no backstory. A lot of them are new characters with no backstory, but even them I think are worth talking about. They're evocative, they're cool, and almost every new character in Magic kinda comes without backstory, and even if they do, you don't necessarily know it. You're looking at the cards. The cards telling you the story is much more important. As time passed and I realized I was not going to be able to get that video out in a timely manner when Omenpaths was still fresh in people's minds, I said, okay, Marvel Superheroes is coming out. And when it does, there is definitely going to be a new Omenpaths set. I'm unreasonably excited for this. Like I said, I really liked Omenpaths. So I think that will be a great time to revisit the Omenpaths and talk about what it did well and explore these characters. So I said, okay, great. I am going to try to make that video. I have months to make this video. And I'm having a really hard time doing it. And it's not because there's nothing to say, it's that there's too much to say. I got to this point where I couldn't bring myself to work on this thing. There was too much pressure for it to be good, and that pressure's all internal. No one is putting that pressure on me. No one knows that I'm going to make this video except for my girlfriend, who's been very, very supportive. And yet here I am. I like Ruzik. I like Rocco. I like Vazen. I like Carlos. You know, like, all of these characters, like, I don't have a script in front of me. I just know these guys because I really do genuinely like this set. And I think they're all really cool and evocative. We can place them on worlds. We know where they're from, even though there was no supporting documentation. How cool is that? We don't need wizards to tell us where things are to still know that they're there. I feel like a lot of sets kind of miss that. I love the story. I've been an avid reader of the story recently. I won't say for my entire time of playing Magic, but recently I've been making sure that I'm following every chapter of the story, and I like it, but I also feel like when I look at the cards, for a lot of sets, I just feel like they're devoid of narrative. They're just game pieces. And that sucks. But with Omenpath, with no story, it's the opposite. There's no story there, but I can see the story happening on the card. And they do require a little bit of background information. If you don't know that Alessos and Pras are citizen performers on the plane of Theros, this is a less interesting card. It's still evocative. Look at that guy dancing with a spider. That's sick. It feels so Magic. It is this very silly version of fantasy. I don't know if people talk about this or not, but like, Magic is such a unique take on fantasy. And a lot of that is because it's not afraid to be kind of silly. Ever seen this guy? This is a real Magic card. We didn't need Omenpaths for this to exist. There are things happening in Magic that are silly every set, and it's whimsical and fun, and Omenpaths is that on every card, and it's a delight. I'm rambling. I need to get to the cards. So, without further ado, let's start with Dominaria. Dominaria is the original Magic the Gathering plane, and while it is full of all sorts of weird stuff, we don't need to go over all the details here because there's only a couple cards I want to actually talk about. Vaesen, Two-Faced Trickster, appears to be a reference to Vesuvan Shapeshifters. Vesuvan Shapeshifters have always been depicted as two reflected images of the same person, and that is exactly what we are seeing here. So Vesuva was a specific island, I believe it's been destroyed at this point, I'm not 100% sure on that, where they had this craft of Vesuvan diplomancy. And I believe it is not magic that is continued to be well known in Dominaria today, whatever today equates to, but in modern day magic. What's interesting, I think, though, is that the robes actually match that of Tolarian Academy. Tolarian Academy was this old school that's actually been destroyed now in the modern magic timeline, but there's a bunch of splinter schools that still practice their teachings. I think that Vesuvan diplomancy is supposed to be the sort of lost art, but to me, Vaesen is showing this idea that they have somehow learned this lost art and are trying to perfect it in a modern day lens. That said, the idea of modern day in Through the Omenpaths is not super clear. We can't assume that every card being depicted is intending to depict a modern day Magic timeline moment. Although, I kind of like to believe that they are, it just makes the whole set more interesting. On the contrast, actually, maybe not the contrast, maybe similarly, Drunith, Reviver of the Hive, is a human scientist, and their name combined with their art shows us that they are trying to learn how to create more slivers. Slivers are, okay, let's see if I can get this right. Slivers are sort of like an alien species in Magic. They are from an original plane that did exist, but what we need to know now is that Slivers ended up on Dominaria. There are a bunch of old cards that have flavor text from a character called Rukramel, who had field notes studying Slivers, going like, oh, what are these things that have showed up? We gotta study these. Even though they're basically like an alien, they studied them like they were an animal. I think that's really, really cool because eventually, Rukramel got her own card. She did not have one for many, many years, and then one set, she got her own card, and in that card, we can see that she's basically exactly where Drunith is standing. Now, this card, even though it took many years to ever become to print, is still depicting an old moment. We can still place Rukramel in the far past of Dominaria's history, and if we assume that Drunith is a modern-day Magic character, it seems like someone has stumbled upon these old field notes and is trying to carry on Rukramel's research. I don't think that they know why they're doing this. I don't think that they have a good reason for making a bunch of slivers, but it is very cool to me, especially considering this set came out immediately after Edge of Eternities. Edge of Eternities was the space set, and in it we saw not really a lot of slivers, but the hints that slivers might be coming back soon. There was a hive pool that could create sliver tokens, and it was the only sliver thing in the entire set. But combining these two things, it feels like maybe something in the larger multiverse is happening with slivers, which is very, very cool. Speaking of the Edge, let's talk about that plane next. The Edge is the space set, as said before. It is oftentimes interpreted as being sort of not actually a plane, but sort of like space between planes. But the space between planes is called the Blind Eternities, and I don't think the Edge is the Blind Eternities. It is outer space that borders on the Blind Eternities. I think it's its own plane. I don't know. You'll hear different people have different opinions on that. But in it, the set itself, Edge of Eternities, focused on the Sothera system, which was a specific series of planets orbiting the same sun, or at least it was, which has been collapsed into a magic black hole known as a super void. Don't worry about it, we'll get to it as we go. And through the Omenpaths, we saw this plane pretty thoroughly explored, largely through the lens of villains. Villains was a set-specific type, not technically introduced, but first time brought to standard in Through the Omenpaths. They are the foil to the hero type that was introduced to standard in the Final Fantasy set. I think that in the Through the Omenpaths conversions, they did a pretty good job at making the villain cards feel like villains. In Edge of Eternities, the main antagonistic faction were the Monoists, who were actually the people who were trying to collapse suns into these super voids. This created for a very good baseline for villains in the set, although they only really did a few that feel like actual Monoists. Honius Horizon Splicer, this feels like Monoist through and through. They are actually manipulating black hole energy, trying to do something absolutely absurd. Very, very nice. On the other hand, Ozor Chronicle of Collapse actually seems like it's not even probably from Sothera at all. When I first saw this card, I went, I don't know where this is. That doesn't look like the Edge to me, and I think I'm right in that it doesn't look like Sothera, the only part of the Edge we've seen. But it's been confirmed that this is actually, in fact, not just my opinion, but it is confirmed that this is on the Edge. So why does it look so different? Well, they are the Chronicler of Collapse, and I assume this is the collapse of a sun into a super void, probably documenting a previously successful collapsing by the Monoist in a different system. See, Sothera's system is, of course, a system of 5 planets, 1 for each color, orbiting the super void, because it's a magic set. But in this art, we can see at least 7 planets orbiting a super void in Ozor's hologram. So yeah, I think it makes total sense that they are not in Sothera. Their faction does not match Sotherans, and it doesn't need to. They're somewhere else in the Edge, exploring the wider plane. Other things that we are sure are in the Edge would be Gobin, the Genesplay Savant, who then transforms into Fleam. In this set, there was a cycle of transforming cards, and for the most part, they have stuff to do with literally going through the Omenpaths. In this case, they're not traveling through the Omenpaths. Presumably both sides of the card are from the Edge, as confirmed by the artist. But goblins don't seem to be part of the Edge. We didn't see a single goblin in the original set. So it seems entirely probable that the genes that Gobin is splicing to make Fleam actually came through some kind of Omenpath to create the possibility of this even happening in the first place. Other than that, Marauda Neuron Hacker is just a card I think is very, very cool, and I think is probably in the Edge, but I could not actually say for sure. There's not a lot going on in the art. We can see a blackboard, we can see some kind of experiment happening, but that's about it. It feels appropriate from a tech level standpoint, but it could easily be a completely new plane that we just haven't ever been to. Lastly though, I want to talk about Surus Spider Silk Innovator. This is a card that doesn't give us a lot to go on in their image. They are doing some kind of experiment, what then eventually flips into Surus Silk Tech Vanguard, using this machine that uses spiders to like web stuff. It's very silly, but if we look at Surus's output, it is a 1-to-1 match of the Sunstar Lightsmith card that just shows that it couldn't possibly be on any other plane. The precedent of the outfit is just too strong. However, on the back of the card, I have no idea where they are. I think this one very likely did go through an Omen path, or they're on some planet where there's alien birds that we've just never seen before. Like, there's just no precedent for this 4-winged, bifurcated beak bird. Continuing with the villain's theme, let's talk about Duskmourn. Similarly to Edge of Eternities, which came out immediately prior to Through the Omenpaths, Duskmourn is a relatively recent set, which is trying to do a weird horror genre plane where the entire plane is encapsulated in a massive haunted house, which is effectively the extension of the body of a big moth demon. Yeah. While there are some survivors that live in the house and try and just make do, a lot of the humans are cultists who have turned to worshipping Valgavoth because, well, if you can't beat him, join him, I guess. Withar Cocoon Keeper is probably the most interesting representative of the Valgavoth cultists in the set. In their art and their name, we can see them wrapping people up in these cocoons, which is something that was established as a practice of the cult of Valgavoth to sort of be reborn in Valgavoth's image or something. Similarly, Nil Vessel of Valgavoth is a cultist of Valgavoth. There's not a lot going on here, they just are one, which I think is actually kind of nice. In the original Duskmourn set, we really only saw Victor Valgavoth Seneschal, so it's nice to have a few more names and faces to associate with this faction, since it's actually kind of a big deal on the plane. Rounding out the really important villains, we have Carlos Suave Schemer of New Capenna. New Capenna is sort of a 1920s Art Deco world, where it's one cool big city and all the gangs that run it. In its original set, New Capenna was mostly about the interwarring gangs, but since then we've seen a lot of stuff happen to the plane via the Phyrexian invasion, which is probably something I should have already mentioned. The Phyrexian invasion was a simultaneous multiplanar invasion of the faction, the Phyrexians. I don't really know how to explain Phyrexians. They are their own type of thing, but recently they did this big multiplanar-wide attack, and it's presumably why we even have Omenpaths right now, because they had to bore through the multiverse to send out their army. And the Omenpaths are like the remnants of these artificial Omenpaths that still exist due to like instability in the multiverse. I guess it's complicated. New Capenna got hit pretty hard, so while originally it was a plan about these gangs warring, the actual current situation is a bit up in the air, and we don't really know what's going on with all of them. Regardless, one of the gangs was the Obscura, which introduced the connive mechanic to the game, and the villains in the Through the Omenpaths set use the connive mechanic, so a lot of them were labeled as part of the Obscura. Carlos Suave Schemer is very clearly an Obscura character. They just fit the color identity, they fit the concept, and they fit the look. They just do it, and they do it well. I am rambling. I need to hurry up. That said, maybe we should keep talking about New Capenna a little bit longer, because Wizards kind of kept using them as a relevant plot point throughout Magic leading up to now, especially in regards to Thunder Junction. Thunder Junction is the Wild West plane, and how does that work in Magic? Well, it is a plane that was basically uninhabited. Maybe not, maybe yes. It's a little bit unclear when it comes to the Cactus folk, but we don't need to talk about them right now. It was a plane that we have now started going to via Omenpaths. When Omenpaths opened, a bunch of them connected to Thunder Junction, and Thunder Junction was then set up as sort of like a hub for people who wanted to go from one plane to another. The idea that people are just kind of casually going between planes is interesting. I don't think that's really going to be happening too much. Like, most people just don't do that, but they can now, especially ones where their homes kind of fell apart due to the Phyrexian invasion and they don't want to be there anymore. New Capenna very much treats Thunder Junction like it's Wild West. One of the other gangs of New Capenna was the Riveteers, and while they are a gang, they also were in charge of a lot of the industry of that plane. And in Thunder Junction, they set up a rail system connecting all the different Omenpaths and stuff. It's actually kind of rad. So we see a lot of New Capenna's influence in Thunder Junction, even though it's a different plane. Generous Betty Ray is a great example of a character who I think, even though we can see that they are on Thunder Junction right now, is most likely originally from New Capenna. They're an outlaw from New Capenna that went to Thunder Junction as a mercenary to start a new life. Other than that, there's Scorvus, Amy's Crime Lord. I don't know what this guy's deal is, I just think he's cool looking. And the Scouring Storm Soul. This guy, that's Thunder Junction right there. I don't know what that is. Let's go to Ravnica. Ravnica is a fan favorite plane. It is basically a big city that has 10 different guilds that control different parts of the infrastructure. However, the most recent time we went to Ravnica, we focused specifically on this detective agency that opened on the plane. So, in Through the Omenpaths, we see largely Ravnica is represented as the detective plane. So Margot on the case is just a detective. And honestly, I think she's very cool, so I don't really mind that. Unrelated to the detective stuff though, we have Oak's Mouth to Many Eyes. And this is a character that I have not seen anyone else share this opinion on, but I am so confident that they are from Ravnica. Mutant is a very weird type in Magic. For the most part, very few rare exceptions, Mutant is exclusively used as a modifier. You can have elf mutants, you can have goblin mutants, but you don't ever have mutants, except for a few rare exceptions. The main one is the Simic on Ravnica. Simic are the bioengineers. They're blue-green, and they like to combine things. And oftentimes that does create a hybrid mutant thing. But we have precedent of the Biomancer's Familiar right here, which is just a mutant. They're just this hairless, smooth-skinned, four-armed thing that is helping out a Simic Biomancer. And they look exactly like orcs. Other than that, we have another flip card, Kren Undercity Dreamer. Now, I wasn't 100% sure that this was supposed to be Ravnica when I first read the card, because while Undercity is a location in Ravnica, I feel like there could be any number of Undercities, but it does actually track well with the Golgari Undercity, which is this sort of subterranean city where the Black-Green faction hangs out and does all their weird stuff. This guy is dreaming of a better life, and apparently they made it through an Omenpath and ended up on Kylum. Kylum being the weird sports plane, I guess? It's full of organized gladiatorial combat. And while I don't really know anything else going on Kylum, I hope we get to return to that plane so we can dig into what is actually going on, not just, hey, here's a place where some combat is happening. However, the way that they actually used Kylum in the set is that they used it to represent heals. Once again, trying to make the villain type work, they presented a few characters as these gladiatorial combat people who are heels. They're hamming it up for the audience. They want the audience to boo them like a professional wrestler would, and it works so well. So we've got Dreadfang loathed by fans and Ruzek booed but victorious, which both just feel so fitting of this Kylum heel villain character. What's next? Ikoria. Ikoria is a plane that is full of all sorts of things that work really well with this set. Humans that bond to creatures, and a lot of the cards in this set represent humans and spiders working together to represent these spider humans from the original Spider-Man set. It has weird fusions between animals and other animals mashed together and mutated, which is different than the mutated stuff we talked about before. The mutated creatures from Ikoria don't have the mutant type. Don't worry about it. It's just Magic's inconsistent sometimes. It's fine. So that works really well for any of the weird spider creature hybrids. We have some spider cats, we have some spider dinosaurs, and we have a spider boar. It works really well. So between these two things, we have a lot of potential for Icorian-based cards. And they're usually pretty easy to identify because of the giant crystal growths, which is how we also know that Bracco Heartless Hunter is additionally on Ikoria, even though it is doing neither of those two things. The best representation of the actual working together bonders thing is Nia, Skysail Storyteller. Skysail being an actual named location in Ikoria. And when we flip the card, we see them riding atop a giant winged spider. It is absurd and perfect. Next, Eldraine. Eldraine is sort of the fairy tale set, and while there's a few cards I think might be on Eldraine, I can point to a couple that I think are really cool that are definitely on Eldraine. First is King of the Coldblood Curse. They are a lizard. They are not originally a lizard, it seems like, because they are cursed. That is the whole point. And we know this is Eldraine because the artist has confirmed such. There were debates whether or not this was Bloomburrow, which is like the animal people set, or if this was some other kind of place where the person was actually a human or other creature originally and was cursed to be a lizard, and it seems like it is the latter. Additionally, the Watcher on the Road is a card I've seen most people not know exactly where it is, but I am convinced it is Eldraine. Because if we look at their fashion, we look at their hat, we look at the dangly bits, and we see it lines up perfectly with the Threadbind Clique, binding someone who's dressed exactly the same as the Watcher on the Road. I don't think they're the same person or anything. Things are slightly different. The hat's a different style. The person's got a beard, stuff, but it's very clear that it is the same fashion. Theros is the sort of ancient Greek set, I guess. We've already talked about in the intro Alessos and Pras. Bellion, though, is maybe the most interesting. Bellion the Parched is an elemental villain, and their art depicts a Therosian merfolk. But they're not a merfolk. What's up with that? In the background, we can see that they are in the underworld. As with any sort of Greek mythology-inspired thing, there are some messed up punishments for being a villain who dies and goes to the afterlife. In this case, they have become a being of pure water who can never quench their thirst. What the heck? That is such a mythological proportions punishment. It is beautiful. Let's circle back around to what I said before about mutants. Simic are blue and green, and so if you needed to have a blue or a green mutant, you would probably choose the Simic. It has precedent, and that works. Since Through the Omenpaths is all about converting Marvel's IP into something Magic can use, and in the lore of Marvel's comics, mutants are not human. They don't get to be mutant humans. They have to just be mutants. They don't get both types. And that creates for a very weird situation for Magic's design. Recently, as of Duskmorn and Aether Drift, we got 2 new examples of mutants that are not additionally something else. In Duskmorn, we saw the Hand That Feeds, a pure mutant, not even like a job subtype. It is a big, horrifying, giant hand with a mouth that's going to try and kill you. After that came Aether Drift, and with it a new faction, the Gestalt Endriders. Gestalt was established as a plane that we have never been to before, where an Omenpath opened and everyone went, we're leaving this plane, it sucks here, and they ended up in Avashkar, the plane where Aether Drift takes place, and entered the race. Because, I don't know, they like racing, I guess. Sure, why not? That plane is sort of a Mad Max inspired thing, and so it's full of like nuclear fallout and mutants. As such, that set did include a mutant scout, someone who is, they look like a mutated human. I'm not sure, maybe they are like a mutated human, but you lose the human type when you mutate. It's entirely possible that that's what Magic's doing, but either way, it established a non-blue-green pure mutant, and one which could reliably be used to depict somebody with a job. It would be hard to take a mutant character from comics and try to represent them on a Duskmourn style mutant because of how non-human they are at that point. It would be hard for them to have like the warrior job or like the mercenary job. Like the hand that feeds is not a mercenary. Mutant Surveyor, though, are representative of a pure mutant from Gestalt. Sure, why not? And so that brings us around to Crash Reckless Endrider, which is a mutant villain, no other subtypes. Definitely still in that like humanoid but mutated kind of camp, but fully just their own thing, and it works. Worth pointing out, the Gestalt Endriders were not all mutants, they're just worrisome amongst their ranks. And I do think it's very possible that they were established as a faction, specifically so they could be referenced through the Omenpaths projects, but I can't confirm something like that. Additionally, though, we do have Wrench, who is a human rogue villain, not a mutant. Wrench is just another Gestalt Endrider. They're very clear from the aesthetic that is where they came from. Next, we're going to rapid fire rattle off a few more one-ofs on Alara, which is a plane I don't know a lot about, but I know that there's one spot on the plane called Esper, and it has some really, really pretty filigree in the metalwork, and people are kind of mostly made of metal, I guess. And that has Physic, Ethereum Mechanic, who is a artifact creature spider. They are not like a human spider, so they didn't have to do anything with like a human and a spider teaming up. It's just a Esper filigree spider, and it looks sweet. On Arcadios, we have Bio, Irritable Instructor. They are clearly of the Lorehold faction, which is the red-white magic school that teaches like cleric magic and spirits and archaeology. It's very cool. If this is coming out when I think it's coming out, the new Strixhaven set has just released. If you want to know more about Lorehold, it's topical right now. Next on Innistrad is the Infernus. The Infernus is a big elemental big fire thing, and we can see in the art in the foreground a bunch of angels trying to defend this city from this Infernus. And the architecture lines up perfectly with Innistrad, and the angels look like Innistrad angels that we have seen. Innistrad being sort of a Victorian horror, everything just kind of sucks here kind of plane. That feels so rude, but it's kind of true. What I think is weird about this card, though, is that I really don't know why they didn't make it the Magmaloth. On another card in the set, not a legendary creature, they have Lava Brink repels the Magmaloth. Lava Brink being a place on Ikoria that we previously mentioned, and the Magmaloth being not something that's been previously defined, but we can see in the art that it would fit perfectly as the Infernus. They totally could have combined these two cards and had it be Lava Brink repels the Magmaloth and the Magmaloth. I just don't know why they didn't do that. I think they should have. It would have been cool. Anyway, next on Ixalan, we have Luis Pompous Pillager. Ixalan is it's like an Age of Sail, Mayan, Incan, Aztec, Mesopotamian, plane full of water and islands and dinosaurs and pirates. And the Vampire Conquistador faction is made up of Vampire Conquistadors, and Luis is one of them. Okay, that is the highlights from all across the different planes, except for one thing I've been saving, which is the Symbiotes. Symbiotes were a completely unique thing for Spider-Man. They are the symbiotes, like Venom, from the Spider-Man franchise, and they had a whole bunch of symbiotes in the set, and they needed to do something with them. And what they did was sweet. They created a new creature type, symbiote, and they developed an entire unique aesthetic for these symbiote creatures. We got Rylix the Accursed, Egrix the Bile Bulwark, Verilax the Havenskin, Desecrex Gift of Servitude, and a flip card, Vigo Enforcer of Ix Crossing, flipping into Vigo's End of Ix Crossing. All of these show different stuff across the multiverse. Raelex looks like it's from Ixalan. Egric, we don't know where is. The merfolk in the background of their art don't line up with any existing merfolk, so it's most likely a completely new plane. Vigo, in Forge of Vix Crossing, flipping into Vigo, End of Vix Crossing, is similarly an unknown plane. It's impossible to tell where this is, and it looks like it is maybe not going so great there anymore when right now, so maybe it doesn't really matter where it is. But all of them have this same aesthetic of symbiotes, these grafted creatures either consuming something or completely existing on their own. Maybe even some of them are just symbiotes as opposed to like symbiote spider like Egrix. Makes me wonder if the symbiote is wrapped around a spider or if it's just in the shape of a spider, because sometimes Magic does that where looking like something is enough to count as that thing. However, one symbiote that I have not mentioned yet is Skivix the Augmenter. And there are a few others I haven't gone into, but this one specifically I think might be the heart of it all. Now, the fact that the symbiotes are a completely new thing, but we are seeing them all across the multiverse, makes me think they're not just, oh, they're all from a new plane, we'll just make a new plane full of symbiotes and stick them all there, which is what they could have done. But they didn't. It looks like the symbiotes are a new force in the multiverse that has then been spread throughout the Omenpaths to land on these different planes and infect people across them. Specifically, Raelex I think is a great example because we can see it actually consuming a person and becoming its symbiote in the process in the art, whereas the other ones, it's kind of already happened. The reason I want to bring out Skivix the Augmenter is because we are not simply seeing, like in Egrix, a spider-shaped symbiote. We are seeing a spider and a symbiote. This, to me, looks like a spider creature who is creating the symbiotes and spreading it through the multiverse. They are a thing on their own, augmenting others, not simply being its own thing. And I don't know, maybe I'm reading into it a bit too much, but looking at this, it just feels so much like this is the source of the symbiotes, this new faction, which we can explore in a future set sometime. Oh, I hope it's part of Reality Fracture. Reality Fracture is a set that's coming out at the end of the year of this video coming out. However, in the actual art here, is that Duskmourn? The way that the background looks like water falling in the same way as the Flood Pits, a location in Duskmourn. Duskmourn, again, being this haunted house, but it's also got biomes because magic, and one of them is just like a constantly flooded place called the Flood Pits, and it's not just flooded, there's water constantly falling out of things, and I think that this is on Duskmourn. And if this is the source, that actually kind of makes sense. So while there are all these Omenpaths that are opening up across the multiverse, Duskmourn, as a house that is a plane, opens doors into other planes sometimes. Skivix the Augmenter could easily be something on Duskmourn that is creating this symbiote and sending it out through the doors that exit into other planes. I can't say that with any certainty, but yeah. There are a few miscellaneous ones I want to talk about that don't really have an existing plane that they're obviously associated with, nor are they symbiotes. Serena, the Bargain Spinner, I just really like this card. She's like a merchant riding on a spider. She looks so cool, and I like her a lot. Kraza, the Swarm is one. This was kind of one of the faces of the set in a weird way. When the set was first coming out, it was the earliest card to be previewed with Omenpath art. They basically kind of pretended Omenpaths didn't exist until Spider-Man was released, except for with Kraza, which was used to sort of promote, like, you know, early purchase bundles on MTG Arena and stuff. And it is very definitely just its own plane that we've never been to before, which is really cool looking. And I think a lot of people got really hyped for the idea of like, whoa, they're gonna be this cool new spider plane. And instead they did the like multiplanar thing, which I really enjoyed, but like it does show you how cool it could be to just have like a standalone weird spider plane. Circling back to Serena, I kind of just breezed past them. We don't know where that is. There's a few theories about where it could be, but it's pretty generic. It's like hard to say. Boris the Spider Rider. I originally thought this was Thunder Junction, but it doesn't really have to be. I don't know why the like criminals are wearing those masks, so it could be really kind of anywhere, but look at this guy riding a spider. They look like they're having a great time. I love it. Yaren Oski, I just really like this card. They're so like a retired older adventurer. It's so cool. As for where it is confirmed that we don't know. It is either a plane that just wasn't specified and the artist just drew whatever they felt like and will eventually be retconned into a plane, or it will be used for a future plane sometime in the future and is a completely original place. But we can't say that it's like on Thunder Junction or in Kaldheim, because if it is, it'll be a future retconning, not somewhere that it was always intended to be. Wardens of the Silverwood Summit, I just think this card is sick. I don't actually know where the Silverwood Summit is. I was really hoping to try and figure it out, but I couldn't. I just love the art. Jesper Essing did such a good job. And I don't know if I said that name right, I'm realizing, and oh well. And then Oris, Last of the Weblords, is same as Kraza. Like, they're like clearly some completely new place that's never been seen before, and I hope we get to explore it more. It's rad, it's so cool. And that brings us to all of my highlights. There are other cards, but this recording's gone over an hour. I hope I can edit it down into a reasonable amount of time. I hope this is entertaining in some variety. I hope I gave decent, like, background on the planes. I kind of breezed through things, but also went way too much into detail on others. It's a mess. I just need to finish this video. So I'm sorry it's not the best it could have been, but hey, finished is better than perfect. I've been Darcy Bits. I will see you next time. I'm really excited for the next Through the Omenpaths. And I really hope these characters, these cards, these settings will get to actually be explored one day in the future. Maybe Reality Fracture. It feels like it would be appropriate. Alright. Have a good night. I'll see you next time. That's not where the camera is.